One review. Book one naman all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is the author of several books and the author of the upcoming book, Darkling. No other than Mr. Chris Riker.
Hello.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Chris. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Well, I am Chris Riker, and I've been a writer for as long as I could get a paycheck doing it. About 10 years ago, I finally decided to take it seriously and start writing novels and short stories. This latest book, Darkling, is the culmination of everything that I've learned along the way. And I've tried to improve and refine my voice. It's all in there. I keep pointing upwards. That's back on my wall. There's an early cover version of it. The book itself comes out on Friday.
Mr. Chris Riker, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world.
Thank you for having me, Daniel.
Yes, indeed. So, what was the seed of inspiration of Darkling, an American Hymn?
Well, there are several inspirations. One, I'll give credit to my writers group. It is the Lawrenceville Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Group. And they like to do genre, so it can be anything from fantasy to science fiction. So I had to keep that in mind. I had to keep something a little bit out of the ordinary or out of real world. So that's one level. The next level is I just have a thing about billionaires. I'm a terrible anti-billionaire kind of guy. That does not mean I'm a communist. I am not, nor am I a socialist. I'm none of the names they would throw at you, but I just don't like the uber wealthy. There's something inherently dark about it. And this began me on Darkling. I figured that it was going to be a story about a demon who embodies all of the joy of capitalism. And I mean unfettered capitalism. Again, go out, make a buck, do the job you like, produce the thing you like, sell it, do a service, whatever you're good at, whatever brings you joy and money, all to the good. But don't go out and just hurt people to make money. To me, that's evil. That's selfishness. And so what better way to show that on the page than a demon? Well, okay, fine, all fine and well so far. I tried to write that story, but I found that was kind of boring. It didn't have any life to it. And I remembered on a previous book, this one, Goody Celeste, which is also set in my home state of Rhode Island. I had sent a copy up to a friend of mine, Lisa, and she works promoting the town of East Greenwich. So she did a little bit of historical research over the years and learned about our home state more than we ever learned in school. And this was the key. She sends me a note. Did you know that Rhode Island was the center of slavery for the first half of the 19th century? And I said, no, I did not. I swear, I did not know that. My home state, my little bitty Rhode Island, smallest state of the states, was the center of slavery. 70% or more of all slave ships sailed out of Rhode Island, primarily Newport, but other ports too. And I'm thinking, why don't I know that? We studied history in school. Why did I not know that? And I want to make it clear that I'm not saying teachers hid this knowledge. I'm not a believer in conspiracies either. I just think that it wasn't taught. The part about slavery was kind of focused on the South, the plantation, picking cotton slaves. So I started to do a little more research. And as I'm doing that, I have my story. My demon is coming to my home state. Now I know what I'm writing about. I know that he is motivated only by the goals of capitalism, progress, the betterment of people, all of these lofty sounding goals, and of course money, but he's carrying slaves. So the book opens, or chapter 1 opens, there's a prelude that gives you a little flash of what's coming later in the book. But chapter 1 opens during the Atlantic Passage, and there is a slave on board a ship, and she is being told by this demon that it's the best thing that's ever happened to you. Because what else would a demon say to a slave? You're leaving this primitive place. You're coming to this great civilized place, and there's money and there's all sorts of opportunities. It's twisted. It's meant to. My mind is calling back things like the song Sail Away. I don't know if you remembered that one.
Yes, indeed.
Sail away. We'll go.
Yes.
Anyway, it's about a huckster coaxing people away from their homes to come on the slave ship and become slaves. And I think my main character, my demon, whose name is Mr. Orv, O-R-V, I think he incorporates that spirit, this hucksterism. So he's convincing the girl, who's really just a teenager, her name is Adeze, this is going to be fantastic. Best thing that ever happened to you. Of course, she's heartbroken. She's surviving in the hold of a ship on the way to a new life she knows nothing about. Now I know what his story is. So I go along and I have my group I told you about, my writers group, and I get through a couple of chapters. And as I'm presenting it to them, I realize, oh crap, she has to speak, because I'm telling it all from his point of view. Originally, it was going to be basically the Screw Tape Letters, which is, I don't know if you know C.S. Lewis's The Screw Tape Letters. It's one demon writing letters to another demon about how great it is to be a demon and how bad Christianity is. C.S. Lewis, being a big proponent of Christianity, he thought that reverse psychology would be a fun way to present his case. And it's a good little book. But mine was starting to go a little too far along the same lines until Adeze starts telling me, I got to speak. You've got a couple of chapters already where the demon is doing all the narration, telling it all first person. Now let me tell my side. And this helped the book come alive. I'm a crazy person. I write people on the page, and if I give them just a little bit of character, a good name, a little bit of background, they start talking to me. And more than once, I've had characters tell me what has to happen to them. You know, I will have plans. Oh, we're going to go here next, and we're going to do this with you. And they're like, no, that's not what I would do. that isn't the path we're taking. So they correct me. So Adeze is the first of the characters that really came alive. And it was later that I got Orv down to where I wanted him. And there are other characters. There are 2 other characters who become narrators. There are a total of 4. There's the demon, and then there's the Tice women. And Adeze is one of them. She has a daughter who goes from being the child of a slave to being a local celebrity because she is part white, and she has lovely blue eyes and light skin, and she becomes this desirable being, this product. And she falls into the clutches of Lady Perrin, who's over from England, and she sees the potential of using this bewitching beauty to get her sons closer and closer to the inner circles of power. So she spirits Hope off to England. And then later in the novel, and also the prelude, because you get a setup, later in the novel, we get one of their descendants who is now in 1971 in Newport. We're staying in Newport for the whole book. And she discovers that she is the descendant of a slave. She appears to be white. She was raised white, but she discovers that she has in her bloodline a slave. And it throws her for a loop. She's already dealing with enough problems. She's a young woman coming of age, about 21, I believe. And she is ready to sign her way into her majority, all lawyer things. Her family has money. And she goes into the lawyer's office saying, yeah, I know. My family owned slaves way back when. I know it's a terrible secret. And the lawyer says, no. It's not just that. You didn't just own slaves. Your ancestors were slaves. So that points her in a whole new direction. And when we go to 1971, we don't give up on the earlier characters. She has to find the truth of her earlier ancestors, and we get revelations through the latter part of the book. So the whole thing is one comprehensive, focused story until it all reaches a great resolution, if I do say so myself. So that's Darkling, An American Hymn.
Mr. Chris Riker, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the
Thank you, all of
world. And how did your personal background shape this exploration of American identity?
Well, I told you that this is a discovery for me. And again, I am not pointing fingers at my teachers. I love my high school teachers. I felt like this is an opportunity. Whenever I look into history and I see something that I flat out had never heard of before, not that I know everything, but when I find something that's missing from my knowledge, I want to write about it. I want to explore it and see where it goes. And of course, my background is growing up in Rhode Island. I was there until till just after college. Then I married and moved down to where I am now in Atlanta. I married again to a Chinese wife, and we often visit China, and I make that part of my stories too. But yeah, I feel like I have a legitimate reason to write about Rhode Island and its role in the slave trade. There are things that I found out. I don't know if you know who Roger Williams is. He's the founder of Rhode Island. He fled the Massachusetts colony for religious freedom. Well, he did some other things too that I found out in my research. And I know they didn't teach us this. I know they didn't teach us that he was a slaveholder. But this is news to me, so it finds its way into my books. I do my research as I go. I try to read as much as I can until I feel like I've got a coherent plot. But it's an education, so I hope if my skills are as good as I hope they are, then you're seeing some of this information with the wide-eyed freshness that I find it. I just didn't know this, and it fascinates me that the situation is what it is. Again, what we were taught, slavery equals 1850s until 1860, whatever it was, the emancipation is 63, and then 1865 is the end of that war. No, it's got, quite a bit more to it than that. And my teachings, they left out Newport. So the book is set in Newport, 70% plus. It's a lot. And then as the slave trade really left the Northeast, this was another thing I was taught, basically. And I don't think anybody said it as much, but it was kind of left as an impression that the Northerners were always anti-slavery. Well, of course, that's not true. The Northerners were in the North is where the abolition movement took root. That much is true. And there were some churches, give the churches a shout out, because I'm going to be condemning them later. But give the churches a shout out. The Quakers, for instance, were very persuasive, very large part of the population in Rhode Island. And they said, no slavery, man. Get rid of it. So after a while, into the early 19th century, they finally put an end to new importation of slaves first off, which only tended to move the slaveholders into the breeding business. But they also moved, by and by, over the course of a couple of decades, the slaves basically were either freed or sold south. That's when the South became the slave places. All the slave states. I think Texas is on that list too.
Mr. Chris,
but
yes,
one more quick
yes,
thing.
Go ahead.
The North had the industry, and what do you think industry needs? Raw materials. Where did
Yes.
those materials come from? From the slave plantations in the South. So the North still had a big hand in what was going on. And all of this, I didn't either. I'm a slow student. Maybe I was, maybe I am, or I was never taught it. So it's fascinating to me to find out a little bit more about this history.
So, Mr. Chris, what role does darkness plays as both metaphor and reality in the book?
Well, okay. Um, the metaphor is probably easier to see. The reality, sure, there's physical darkness. There, I use some symbolism, but the darkness is, of course, in people. Not to give too much away in the book, but it's always people. My demon Orv would not have any power over anybody if they weren't predisposed to do rotten things to each other. I mean, in in my understanding, free will triumphs over demons and even can turn itself against God, if that's what you believe. It's people. It's people. My personal belief, and I don't ask anyone to subscribe, but my personal belief is there isn't anything else. There's no God, there's no devil. There's just people with darkness in them, but also light. I come down to believing that people are a never-ending battle between selfishness and empathy. And you can call empathy good, and you can call selfishness evil. We can't get rid of evil. We wouldn't be human if we did. You can't, God help us, I'll use that phrase. God help us if we create robots and move into them and say, oh, well, just delete the evil part. We wouldn't be human anymore. So that darkness is always with us. Other than that, sure, there are nighttime scenes and physical darkness. There's a wonderful shipwreck in a storm that you'll love.
Yes,
So plenty
definitely.
of action in the book too.
And which passage best encapsulates the book's core message?
Okay. I don't have my book memorized. Um, I'm trying to think. There are parts in the book. I'm trying to answer that because no, I don't have anything memorized in particular. There are moments that I find there is a scene between Adesi, the first slave who's captured by Mr. Orv, and her daughter. And her daughter is preparing to get on a ship and go to England and have a great life without her mother, because Lady Perrin, the English lady, doesn't necessarily want the competition. She wants to be in complete control, and she doesn't like having mommy along for the ride. So the scene that I wrote is just the mother and daughter quietly spending a day together. Um, the mother bathes her daughter and fixes her hair and tells her a little bit about herself. And it's a very quiet scene. And I like that because I think that's our best hope. I think that's where empathy lives, is when you don't take on the big things, you don't thunder about this, that, or the other stuff. You just relate on a human level. And I think that scene is one of my favorites because that's all she does. She just spends the day. It's a quiet scene. There's a lot of other stuff going on. There are demons chasing each other. There are shipwrecks. There's time travel. There's a curse. But for one brief scene, it's just a quiet mother and daughter communication. And I'll go with that for message. Communicate. How about that for a message? Communicate. And yes,
Yes.
hope is important. It's her name. There's a reason she's named that. And it is the message of the book. All of my books, I will give you spoiler alert. I write nothing that has terrible end of the world endings. Everybody dies. That's not my writing. That is not me. But I also don't believe in neat, tie up all the loose ends. So there's always going to be some things left unsaid. But what you get with my writing is you get a tiny little bit of hope, a little glimmer of hope at the end. Um, I could pick up any one of them. My first novel, if you don't mind me talking about the other books too, my first novel is Come the Eventide, and it is about basically the end of the world. That's page 1. It's the end of the world. The dolphins are trying to save the last surviving humans because the humans are hell-bent on killing each other off for the last few resources. So the dolphins just are like, cool it, just stop the war, stop fighting. They're smarter than we are. So that's a glimmer of hope. Goody Celeste, it's a Wiccan, a young witch who is helping 3 teenage boys learn about life and learn why it's important to care about each other. She's got her own problems and they end up helping each other. Again, there's not a perfect happy ending, but it's the idea that if you focus on hope and if you don't give up, you can keep going. That's the best we can hope for. I've got more. Alexander and the Butcher. There's an actor in the 1960s, and he's doing a show about Alexander the Great. And he decides to get in touch with a seer, and she sends him back to meet the real thing, to do research. Problem is, he winds up in the body of a slave. So he's in the middle of a battle. So he has to use everything in himself, all his skills as an actor, to impress Alexander the Great. And they wind up having a love-hate relationship. Again, I don't want to give away too much. You're welcome to read the book. But again, that one ends with just a glimmer of hope for the salvation, not so much of Alexander, because we know what happens to him. He does not end up well. But our main character, Matt Wilder, goes back to his own time, spoiler alert. And we have to find out, has he changed? And if so, why? And how much of a change? So there's that glimmer of hope. Skinners! I just got the itch to write a horror story, a straight up horror story, but being who I am, I found out that I couldn't just do that. So the Skinners are shapeshifters. They can make themselves look like you. They can do some other things too. They're fantastic healers. They have an ability to hook up with your nervous system and your body and your circulatory system. So they can mimic you, but they can also heal you to some extent. And they are a very small minority race who have this special ability. They're kind of an offshoot of the human race. One of them decides, no, I don't want to just be a minority. I want to rule the world. And he causes all sorts of trouble, gets a lot of people killed. And we have to follow it through till we find out the humans are not so great. The Skinners are not so great. But together, can they fix themselves just a little bit better? That's why it's Skinners, a love story. So it's a horror story with a love story built in. And it's all about hope. Zebulon Angel, this is my drunkalogue. Zebulon Angel is it starts out in Atlanta. He's a dreamer. He probably not to his own best ends. He dreams big. He wants to be a country western songwriter. He's married to a very smart Chinese scientist who has invented a sex candy, which is all fine and to the good. They decide that he's going to be the face of this product back in China, where the market is huge and also the resources come from to make the thing. So they send him over. What could go wrong? And of course, he messes the whole thing up. But he is an alcoholic, and he goes through a hell of his own making, and going through all of the weirdness. Yes, he does go to the necropolis of Emperor Qin, the first emperor who united China, and it's a real thing. If you've ever heard of the terracotta soldiers, not far from the excavation site, there is a mound, and they know there's a city built under there, and they've not opened it because they're afraid that they will expose it to light and destroy some of the artifacts. In the book, he goes inside the city and meets the emperor. But the thing is, he's a crazy person. He's living a mad life. And again, we have to get him through this to the point where he makes a decision to be a healthier, happier, more empathetic person. It's just a glimmer of hope at the end. He does not end up well. He's in a bad place, but he accepts that he's going to do the right thing from that moment on. I'm sorry if that's too much of a spoiler. I dare you to read the description of this book, and I dare you to read it because I promise you, I make good on all of this nonsense. Sex candies and ghost emperors and tomb cities, the whole deal. It's all in there, and it all makes sense in the end.
Yes, and Mr. Chris, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, my other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and Mental Health 101. Love Letters
Fantastic.
in third season, and Movie 101 Review and Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr.
You better
Chris,
listen to them.
yes, thank you so much. And Mr. Chris, what will be your short term and long time goals in
I
writing?
just want people to read my books. And I
Yes.
know that that's a process, especially these days where it's really hard to get noticed. I go to conventions and book signings. I'm happy if I've reached just a few people. This is something that has lived in me forever. I was a TV news writer for 30 years. I always dreamed of writing novels. And about 10 years ago, I finally took the plunge and started actually writing them. Now I have 6. They exist, they're real. The
They're
worst thing for a
real.
writer is to have books in your head. The best thing for a writer is to have books on the shelf. So they're real, and I'm going to keep going. Those are my goals.
Yes, and Mr. Chris Riker, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world.
All
So, can you
right.
please invite our listeners to support all your books, most especially your upcoming book, Darkling?
Yes, please do. Check them all out. Find the one or ones that you like. If you read one, you might want to read them all. You can check
Yes.
all. They all have free previews at chrisrikerauthor.com. chrisrikerauthor.com. Free
Yes.
previews and
Yeah.
short stories, all free.
All free. Yes, people, let's support Mr. Chris Riker. Because if you support him, for sure, more and more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Mr. Chris, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel.
More to come, people. See you soon.